I guess it's time. Well, this week's joke is from VR Sites, and I got it from Twitter. Client says to designer, "It's a bit bright in here. Can you put the shutters down?" "No, up a bit. Down a little bit. A little bit more. How about you move it up a tiny fraction?" Ah, ha, 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 ha. Hello and welcome to Design Career Network's Get That UX Job. I'm Andy Galpern. I am the host and the producer of Design Career Network. And tonight we have two very special guests here for you. Before we get to them, we'd like to share a little more information about Design Career Network. Design Career Network is a community organization, and we publish weekly YouTube shows, actually also on Facebook and on Twitch. And they are completely free and available around the world for you to enhance your design career. Now, the shows are targeted specifically for designers who have a bit more experience at a UX designer specifically, and we like to help you find a new career path in UX, or basically enhance your career path, break into the industry, etc. So tonight, we have two very special guests, my favorite duo, Liu and Jonathan Shariat. And yay! Wait, hold on. Oh, wait, we'll do it like this.
Everyone.
This is equal.
All right.
Equal.
Yes.
So we'll start with Chris and
Hi.
say hi, Chris. Oh, wait, I'm
Hi,
like,
Chris.
oh, I thought you were talking. Starting with Chris. So Chris is a senior product designer / interaction designer, and formerly he was at Mercedes-Benz R&D North America designing voice interactions for car user interfaces. And now he's at Office Hours Projects, where he's mentoring and coaching designers of the future, which could be you.
Yes.
And also he's working on his passion projects and everything that keeps him happy. And in his free time, he goes biking around the world. I believe he did a biking trip around Europe. Maybe that was 2 years ago, but that was pre-COVID. And then on the bottom, but here right now you're back on the top. There you go. Here, there you go. We have Jonathan Shariat, and Jonathan is a fantastic designer who talks a lot about ethics and design. He wrote a book called Tragic Design, co-wrote a book with O'Reilly Media, and he's given a bunch of talks as well. Chris and John have both given a lot of talks at Cascade SF events, which is part of the Design Career Network organization. And anyway, Jonathan is currently at Google as a senior product designer. I believe that's correct. Correct?
Yeah, I think there's a senior interaction designer.
A senior interaction designer. And before that, he was at Intuit, and he's funny. So, okay.
Like funny or?
Funny, like hilarious.
Okay.
And both Jonathan and Chris, they run a podcast together called Design Review Podcast. Right now it's just they used to do it like every week, but now they do it maybe like once a month, or
we do every other week.
Every other week, and it's filled with a lot of really great information to help designers, and we're all in it together. We're in it to win it, to help you achieve your design goals. So go team! Woohoo! Yeah. Wait, you gotta put your hand there, Chris.
Oh yeah.
Let's go. You got whoa Bundy. No, that's so silly. Okay. Right. And anyway, so I'm gonna pass the mic over to Chris and John and Jonathan, whichever you prefer, and let them take the stage. And then how it works is they'll give a presentation, probably like 25-30 minutes tonight. We'll talk about design career salaries, which is very, very important. And we want to make sure that we cover equity, inclusion, and all the things that you are curious about to help you negotiate the best possible salary and the best possible deal for yourself They have a wealth of tips, and I know that it will help a lot of designers in the industry, so stick around. And after they give their talk, we'll have a live Q&A via YouTube chat where you can ask questions and get a lot of really fantastic answers. Okay, that sounds so silly, but no, seriously, very valuable and very helpful. So I'm gonna hang up for a bit and let my friends take the stage.
Thanks,
Here we
Andy.
go. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. That was awesome intro. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about negotiating job offers like a pro. And this is actually originally was an episode of the design review that we put together. But we're going to go a little bit more in depth on some of the things we talked about in that show. But if you didn't, if you happen to miss this for some reason, I don't know why you would miss it since you're here now, but if you missed it, you can always listen to the episode. To get started, let me get my presentation up. All right. Oops.
Nice.
Where did okay, I don't know why this is freaking out now.
You good?
Okay.
Okay. There we go.
There we go. Introductions. We don't need to go too in depth into this since
Andy already did this for us. So we're good to go.
Really great thing. Okay, so the first thing to mention, obviously, is that negotiating a job offer is a really, really important skill to develop.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we don't really get to practice it all much since we sort of only do it, whenever we get an offer, which might be every couple of years or whatever. And if it's your first role, you probably have very little experience doing any kind of negotiations. And so, you might think like, okay, at this point, like I just need to get a job and that's all that I need to do right now. But we want to give you some information that helps you think about not just like how to negotiate better, but why negotiation is really, really important for your career.
Yeah. And then this is why you're attending the talk is, if you can take these skills with you for the next negotiation, it's going to make a huge impact in your career and in your life, really. And because we don't get to try it out every time, we generally get really nervous and we don't do everything that we can do. So good on you for attending the talk, and hopefully we can help you get what you're worth.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk about what's in a compensation package. We talk about this a lot. Not everybody might know the different components that can be in a package. And so first, let's get the definitions out of the way. The first and usually the biggest item. Sometimes it can, depending on certain startups, it can be kind of equal or have a certain ratio to maybe the stock or something. But usually what you care about, because this is what you're going to be living on, is the salary. How much you're going to be making every year before taxes. And you might also get a bonus, and then the bonus is usually tied to a percentage of that salary. You might just be a flat amount. You also have benefits, which can vary widely. This includes your healthcare, which makes up a really big portion of it. How good that healthcare is, how much it'll actually save you every year, how much it could potentially save you if things, if you're not healthy, et cetera. And then also stock and equity. So startups have equity, and public companies generally have stock. And they might give you that as part of the package, either over the course of many years or all at once. And then little perks, things like a stipend for travel to help you get to and from work, maybe a gym benefit, et cetera.
Yeah, and something to call out here is, this is just an abstract diagram. It's not to scale. Different companies will offer different percentages of different things. Some companies, for example, they don't offer bonuses at all. And so you have your compensation package tends to look very different depending on what type of company it is. All right, so we also wanted to take a quick moment just to talk about discrimination and privilege as well. not everyone's going to have the same negotiation experience. And
Yeah.
this is unfortunately true in this industry. People of color, women, even though if they do everything exactly perfectly, it is a sad fact that sometimes you might still end up a little bit behind. And the purpose of this presentation is to try and give you as many tools as you can, so that when you do enter into these conversations with businesses, you have everything you can possibly do to give yourself the best possible leg up. But we do recognize that for both myself and John, that we come from a little bit privileged position here. So, okay.
All right, so first we wanted to kick off with a quick story. My first job or two, I didn't negotiate at all. They wanted to pay me, and I wanted them to pay me, and I was happy with that. And especially with your first role, it's this amazing thing where you've gone from, working some maybe smaller jobs here and there, and suddenly you're able to, you're getting an income. It's coming every 2 weeks. It's a great feeling. And that in of itself can feel like enough, right? And so, eventually I worked more, I got a raise. That was awesome too. Didn't negotiate on the raise. I just was like, hey, great. They want to give me more money. That's great. But around that time when I was moving to my second job, I had gotten a mentor, and he was great. He worked, nearby office. And one thing he told me was, hey, I know you're nervous. Like I'm a very nervous person, especially, at like a restaurant. If I get the wrong order, I'm just going to eat it. I'm not going to bother them. I'm not going to tell them it's the wrong order. I'm that kind of person. Right. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. And he told me, like, hey, just say this one line. That's all you have to do. You can write it down. You can literally just read it off over the phone, and it'll at least start this conversation. It was, hey, thank you for the offer. I'm really excited to join your team. I was hoping for a little bit more on the salary front. Is there anything we can do? That one sentence got me 10% more than they were originally offering. And that blew my mind, because I had left that much money on the table. And that kind of difference can make a huge difference over time in your career, especially early on in the career, but at any point. And as you move from job to job and you have a negotiation here and there, each time you can negotiate even more and more and more. So this is a graph from Linda Babcock, who is an expert in this, that has a really great book. But she kind of shows here just math-wise. If you're on age 27 getting your first job and you negotiate for $7,000 more in that negotiation, here it's about like 10% of the person's salary, just like what I got. By the time you retired, age 65, they would have gotten over $800,000 more in career earnings. And we're not talking about additional, pay raises based off of it, just purely the normal raise you get per, just to keep up with inflation, et cetera. That ends up being a huge amount. And there's a $21,000 difference in their salaries per year as well. So this could be massive amounts. Like, if you also include other things you can negotiate for, like stock, like benefits and stuff, like this number can go up and up. And then every time the person switches a job, which in tech can be every 2 or so years, this can add up to be quite a bit. And so the importance of negotiating and at least having the conversation cannot be understated. You need to get what you're worth.
Yeah. All right. So how do we get started with negotiations? So the first thing is to simply just do your homework, right? If you do an on-site interview or something, start by preparing for the conversation. Start a document, write down all the things that are on your mind, things that you want to talk about. What are the key points that you need to communicate? When people get nervous, it's fairly common for people to kind of go into this fight or flight mode, and they can't think clearly, right? Just like
you can see this woman here is on the show, and he just asked her, name a woman,
right.
And
which
she
could be her
can't do it, right? You just have the flight mentality, and the same thing can happen on your phone calls.
Yeah. So coming up with a plan, preparing a document, all that is going to help you prepare for the negotiations that are about to come.
The next thing that you can do to kind of help set yourself for success is being careful with some of the questions that they might be asking you, whether they're directly trying to get this as a future negotiation tactic or not. It will end up playing a role. And these are questions like, what is your expected salary? What are you making now? These are very, very common. You're talking to the recruiter phase, and maybe it's an initial phone screen or something like that. And you feel really pressured to give answers to these. You don't want to sound difficult, right? And just end your chances of continuing the conversation and getting farther along. But what we need to do is, saying different things like this. Actually, a recruiter gave me this advice a while back. You can say things like, hey, I'm not really concerned here. I know if we find the right fit that we can definitely work something out. Or you could say, I am expecting a big step forward in terms of responsibility and as well as compensation. And if they really, really, really push, you can just say, hey, my expectations are in line with market rates for my role. And also remember that, the slide that we showed the impact of a one-time negotiation. So your current salary gives you confidence to negotiate higher. And that can also end up pushing up the numbers over time as you go, because you can say, hey, I'm making this much right now. I know I can do a little bit better than that in this negotiation.
Right. The other thing to think about is that for every position that you apply to, within the company, the positions are actually assigned a salary range and not just a single figure, right? And so what that means is they're actually expecting some amount of negotiation as part of the hiring process. And so it's really important to not just stick to a single figure and ask for really like the upper end of what you think that range should be.
Yeah, and for me, like this gives me the confidence, right? Like if you come in and you've done research on, okay, for my location, for my position, for however many years experience I have, for maybe in the industry, you can go to these websites like Levels FYI, if it's like more of a FANG type company. There's also Glassdoor and many, many others. And it's actually nice to get multiple sources because they can kind of vary a bit. But if you put in as much specificity for your situation as possible, you'll get the best range for you, and then you'll understand. Okay, there's a little bell curve here. I know at least I can aim for that middle, and then maybe this is a good upper range for me to ask for and push for and see if I can get. That'll give you a really good confidence, because if they're asking for something that's is in the lower end of this graph, that's something that's not really an industry standard of what you're worth. And so for me, having this data gives me confidence. And also if they're really pushing back quite a lot, you can say, hey, looking at all these data sources, I'm looking at this resource, that resource for people in my area with this many years experience. The average is this amount. And I hope you think I'm not average. That's one thing I said one time, and it worked really well. Because they were saying, like, we really think you're like, above average, you're really amazing, you have some special qualities. It's like, well, okay, if you believe that, I should probably be paid not on the low end, but in the high end.
Yeah.
And they're also doing the same research as well, right? Like if they don't have that already predetermined in their salary range, they might go do some research as well. These tools I mentioned have a B2B side where they can pay to get the right estimate as well. So they're might be looking at the same data as you.
Yeah. And so just to share this with you, these are a few examples of different ranges that I found on the internet, just to give you some sense of what the market is paying. Keep in mind also, this is just salary, right? So this is not looking at total compensation. Total comp is usually a much bigger number. And it's much harder to calculate based on all the different variables that are in it. So this is just salary. So just, if you think back to that slide where we had the compensation package, this is just that big green box on the left. But you can see, for a UX designer, sort of like an entry UX designer in the US, it ranges from, 74K all the way up to like around 140K. So, it depends on which source you're looking at. So it's good to look at different sources, but the range is quite broad, and there's a lot, of wiggle room in there for you to negotiate more, basically.
Yeah.
So another thing to do. Okay. Oh, do you want to go?
Yeah, leveraging the interview is really important. As you're going through that process, it's a good idea to start collecting information that's going to help you in the negotiation process.
Yeah. So one thing you can do is, prepare different questions and ask these different questions throughout the interview process, right? Use the interview as a way for you to find out things about the company, right? Typically, when you interview for a job, you sort of feel like this is where they're finding out about you. But this is actually a two-way conversation. You can use the interview for your own purposes to find out about the company and about the role and all that kind of stuff. And there's some things that you can actually ask as part of this process. So you can say, like, how long have they been looking for somebody for this role? And you might be able to find that information out also by looking at the job listings, for example. You might list when the posting was put there. Another thing you can ask is, is this high visibility or high impact role? Right?
Chris?
Obviously, they're going to say
Hold
yes.
on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
But in reality, not every role is going to be super high visibility or not high impact. So it sort of depends on what level role you're applying for and what type of position.
Chris, you're starting to break
up. You're breaking, Chris, hello? You're breaking up quite a bit. We gotta turn off your video for a second. Just turn off your video and focus on okay, there we go. Please hold for a brief moment. We got some great questions we can answer while we're waiting real quickly. Thank you guys for bearing with us. Guys and girls and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Chris will be right back. He's just restarting. Let's go ahead and take a question. Derek Collins. Derek is not sure. Are you still at Netflix, Derek? He spoke at a bunch of Cascade SF events and has been around for a long time, been around Cascade for a long time. So it's great to see you, Derek. Now, while we're waiting for Chris, we can ask, he'd like to know, what if you don't know the current market rate for your role?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, we hopefully answered a little bit in the previous slides, but if you're able to do some research and try and get the as much specificity as you can in that search, that'll help, because the ranges can be huge. If you look at just the United States, it might not match up to where you're at in your city. So city is one of the biggest ones, potentially your years of experience, and then industry. The tech field might be paying more than maybe like a healthcare role or something like that. So that'll help you at least get in with the right number, but never come in with that number. Always come in with just the knowledge, and let them always give the first number. I think we're going to talk about that in a bit, but that at least will give you the confidence to push if it's way low. But if it's high, you can start to work from there and understand where's the upper limit. What's reasonable to ask? Is asking for 10% reasonable, or is that way higher than even the upper bound?
Yeah. Can I add something to that, or is that?
Yeah.
So I think that it's important. Yeah. Like John and Chris mentioned, doing your research is really important, but also, if you don't know what, say you have a unique role, I would list out all the different roles that would describe, that are similar to the work that you do. It might be 4 different things, and then kind of average out how much they make in salary, and kind of say, okay, is this fair? So it's that is one way that somebody taught me how to figure out a role, a salary for a role that isn't quite defined. Now, I think Chris is back.
And another thing to add to that is, if you can talk to a friend, or even a stranger, might be even better, to find out what they're making. Have that conversation with them. Hey, I'm going for an offer. I have no idea what the rates are to push for. would you mind sharing with me your compensation? And I think it's something we should be talking about more.
Absolutely. Okay. Now that I filled in for Chris, no, I'm not Chris anymore. Chris, you have okay. So let's go back to leveraging. Let's take a step back, because I think that it was really important information and we missed it. So if you want to arrow back to that and then start over, I'm going to dip out for a little bit. Here we go.
Where did I leave off, or should we just start from?
Yeah, let's start from the top for leverage the interview. I mean, we're talking about the job interview is a two-way street. It's a way for you to gather information about the role and for the company, and about the company to help you negotiate. And there are some things you can find out.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things you can ask. So these are important things because, as I mentioned, an interview really is a two-way conversation, right? Like, you tend to think of it as the company wanting to just find out about you, but you can also use it for your own purposes to find out about the company and about the role. And so here's some things to think about when you're preparing for interviews. So the first thing would be, have they been looking for a long time? Or have they been looking for somebody for this role for a very long time? Sometimes you can find out from just looking at the job posting itself, right? LinkedIn, for example, shows when a job posting was posted, and then you can sort of track it. And sometimes if you're really paying attention to particular roles, they might post it multiple times just so that that date isn't too old. But that's one way to use the interviews, just to know if if it's taken them a long time to find somebody, then you have a little bit of leverage when you're asking for compensation.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about is whether or not this is a high visibility or high impact role. Obviously, they're going to say yes, it is, because what role isn't high impact, right? But the reality is some roles are going to be, depending on the level, some roles are just going to have a lot more weight to them than others. And so if you're interviewing, say, for a much more senior role, those tend to have more visibility, they tend to have more impact, and so then you as a potential employee can ask for more money. Another thing to do is figure out if you yourself have prior domain experience. So if you've worked in this type of industry before, that already gives you some experience and some understanding of the subject matter, and you can basically use that to say, hey, I'm worth this much more than somebody who has to start from zero. Another thing to think about is whether or not they're excited about you specifically. Now, usually, in the interview, they're not supposed to really say that type of stuff, right? So they're not supposed to tell you like, hey, we really want you, and yeah, we got these other interviews. They're not supposed to do that. So it can be hard to find that out sometimes, but sometimes you can tell how people feel just by the way they talk, and so just be sure to note that as part of your conversations, basically. And the last couple of things are basically around the company itself. Is the company growing? Are they trying to hire more than one designer right now? And is this role a new role, or is it backfilling a position that somebody left? And so if the company is really growing and they're trying to really rapidly expand the team, well, that gives you some leverage, because it can be difficult. It can take time to hire people. And so if you are if you've got a lot of other things going for you for this role, you can ask for quite a lot of money sometimes, based on just the fact that they need to hire a bunch of people really quickly. And if this is a new position or a backfilling role, if somebody left and they're trying to replace that person, something you can always ask is, why did that person leave? And maybe it is or isn't exactly the reason why they left, but it's always good to ask and find out why, because it gives you some sense of the kinds of situations that you'll be stepping into, and you can you might still be okay with it, but it just helps you understand what to ask for in terms of compensation.
So another really big tactic that will help you negotiate is having another offer. Somebody else also wants to hire you. And I know a lot of you are rolling your eyes right now, like, yeah, that'd be nice. But there's a few things you can do to make that more likely to happen. And it comes around like trying to plan and coordinate all your interviews so that they end up overlapping a little bit more than they do. So one of the things that you can do is, maybe this one is you're expecting an offer soon, or you do have an offer. Maybe that you have maybe 2 other interviews going that are trailing. Maybe one is you just had the on-site, you haven't heard back yet, or the other one is maybe like a final phone interview. What you can do is go to the other 2, let them know that you are expecting an offer soon and that you're really excited about the company. And is there anything we can do to maybe accelerate this? And that can also help you, get through. And they will want to do that for you, because that's one, there's already validation out there that you're a good candidate. And they want to be able to have a chance at that as well. And then, seeing if you can delay the one that is ahead and say, hey, I need some time to think about it. A week is very reasonable. And you can even be frank, like, hey, I'm expecting an offer here soon, so I want to be able to compare. Or if you don't feel like saying something like that, you can just say, hey, I need a week to think about it. I need to go over it. Is that okay with you? So as the overall principle here is trying to slow down the ones that are ahead and try to speed up the ones that are behind, and seeing what you can do to make it so you have 2 or 3 or more offers in hand at the same time. Then when you do have that, you're able to say, hey, this company is offering me more. I really want to work for you. What can we do to make this an easy yes? I don't have to choose between pay. I can choose, what I'm excited about. And you can really, make it like a positive experience, but collaborative.
All right. So how do we negotiate more skillfully? There's a bunch of things we have to help you think about how to handle negotiations more skillfully. And so the first thing, the most important thing, really is to always remember that you have leverage. You always have leverage in some way. And especially if you get to the point where a company is making you an offer, keep in mind that that's a lot of work, not just for you, but it's also work for them. And by the time you get to this point, you more or less know there's a commitment, right? They're very committed to making sure that they want this to work out, because they're trying to put together an offer for you. And so it's basically that they need you just as much as you want you need them. And so the key point with this is to be willing to work with them on the package itself, but don't really compromise away the things that are important for you. And so yeah, you always have leverage with this.
Yeah, and really think about, if you've ever been on the hiring side, it's very frustrating. You have you have to spend a lot of your team's time. Like you're giving, let's say it's a 4-hour interview, you're giving 4 hours, but they're giving 4 hours multiplied by however many people are going to spend time with you. And that can be, and then times, however many candidates they've interviewed so far. So it's a huge time commitment on their side and effort, and they might be spending money on advertisements and things like that. So they are, and then the recruiter themselves might have a quota or the hiring manager might have a quota they're trying to meet. So they're very, very, motivated to try and close this as quickly as possible. And that gives you leverage. If they've come to the point where they want to give you an offer, a lot of us might think like, oh, I'm desperately going to say yes. Think a little bit first about, this is a big deal. Like they've gotten alignment from the whole team. They've spent a lot of resources, and they do think that I am fit for the role and I'm the best for the role. So just having the conversation will help that open up the possibilities of increasing the amount of money or the amount of compensation that you'll get. This other rule is one of the biggest rules it's like the first rule of negotiation is one of the biggest. And it's let them speak first. They are inclined to give the first number. They're giving you an offer. But they might start with, hey, we really like you, and the team wants to hire you. What are you looking to make? They might try and push that question back at you again. Let them speak first. Let them give the offer, because it'll always surprise you. I remember there was one where I did some of those things. I did my research, came in with a number. I had like a high end number that I was really going to push for. And, they talked and they finally gave the number, and it was higher than my high end number. And I was completely off guard. I did not negotiate. I was so startled by them offering me more than I was going to push for, that she was like, yeah, that's great. And so if I would have spoken up first, if I would have said like, hey, listen, I'm really I'm pushing for this number. Even I thought that was aggressive. I would have left that money on the table. So give them let them speak first. They'll surprise you. And even if it's very, very low, then you can react to it and they can come back with the next number. You can even let them speak second, right? Like in a sense of, they give you an offer. You don't give them an exact amount that you're looking for. You can say, I was looking for more in this area, looking at my research, blah, 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 but you're not actually giving a number, and have them come back with that number again without you saying, oh, I was looking for X. And let those awkward pauses, let them air out. I mean, awkward pauses are powerful. People naturally want to fill dead space, and they also naturally want to solve problems when that happens. And so they'll be motivated to start to put solutions together that'll help you say yes.
Yeah. And so, like John already mentioned, it's good to let them give the first number. It's sort of like what we were talking about before, where once you've committed to a figure, they know that they don't have to give you more than that. And maybe that's good for you, but you'd never know sometimes if they were actually thinking to pay you even more, right? Because remember, salaries are a range. And so you don't know necessarily what their upper band is. It could be even higher than what the research is showing you. So it's always good to let them give you a number first.
And again, if you're like me and those phone conversations are really hard to say the right things in or whatever, it's totally okay to say, wow, thank you for the offer. I need some time to think about it. Would you mind emailing me the details, and carry on the rest of the negotiation over email, where you can think tactically about what you want to say next and when. It could be a great tactic to just move to email. And then also, you have it in writing, which is going to be helpful as well.
Yeah. All right. So what are some things we should do if they happen to try to lowball us? Because that can happen sometimes too. So the first thing is just to remind them again of the kind of impact that you're going to make, right? You know when you're applying and when you're interviewing that, you're going to do a great job, and they obviously will want you to do a great job. But sometimes the offer may not necessarily reflect that. And so it's always good to reiterate, what you want to do, what you plan to be doing, and the kinds of impacts and things that you're going to make as a result of all that great work that you're going to do.
Yeah, I'm going to help you differentiate yourself in the market.
Yeah.
I really feel like we could streamline the purchase process. You mentioned you really want to, redesign the dashboard to attract new business partners. Reminding them of your purpose that is going to pay for itself, right? Like nobody hires somebody to really lose money. They're going to use you to grow their business, and reminding them of that.
Yeah. And especially if you already have some domain knowledge or domain experience, this only works in your favor, right? So all good.
So the next one is just politely let them know that, hey, this offer is not really what I was expecting, and what improvements can be made. Again, not giving a number, just opening the conversation back up, setting the tone of, hey, that offer fell really short. You kind of messed up. Like I'm someone that you want to hire, and you're offering me low. It's like an unwritten thing that it's offensive and that it's something that they need to do better. But you're saying it in a very tactful, very collaborative and helpful tone that just creates the right atmosphere for the conversation to happen correctly. So, feel free to use something like that, like I was expecting more. If you really need to, usually I use this tactic maybe towards the end of the conversations rather than the very beginning. You can say, hey, if it were X with, Y benefits, like whatever you're actually negotiating on, I'll be ready to sign immediately. Because then they feel that you're not going to just keep moving this forward forever. There's an endpoint, and that can be really tempting for them. If they're like, hey, we really can't do more than X, you're like, oh, okay, well, if we are able to do 7, I can sign right now. This obviously helps if you have another offer, or you don't even actually have to have another offer. You can say, yeah, I do have 2 additional interviews that are, behind this one. And that can also put some fire in their belly to like make a decision and to close this for you. Yeah.
And so make sure you really convey that, you do intend to want to, join the company. It's just for some reason, there's something about the offer that you want to change.
Yeah.
And that said, you can also ask for additional non-salary benefits, right? So remember back to that earlier slide, your compensation really is a package of a lot of different things. And, the challenge for the business is that salary always hits budgets more directly, right? So they're paying your regular salary directly out of the immediate budgets and things that they have on hand. Whereas other benefits and things, they tend to hit the company budgets much later, right? So things like vacation time or healthcare or things like that, they tend to come out a little bit later for the business. And so if, for example, you aren't maybe getting the salary you wanted, but it's still within an acceptable range, you might be able to negotiate for other things like more vacation days, for example, or bigger sign-on bonuses, or a bigger like relocation package, or more other like perks and things for like education or transit or things like that. These kinds of things can really add to your compensation in really great ways. Like for example, vacation time. Who doesn't want more vacation time, right? And so, without the benefit of asking for these sorts of things is simply because, they won't hit the budgets as hard, but you still get something that you want out of it.
Yeah, work from home could be another one of those things that you negotiate.
Yeah.
That's also been in the works, like saying, hey, I want to be able to work from home 2 days a week. Things like that. Hopefully now with all this, people will be more open to that anyway. But if you need to push on that, that's something that you can work into the compensation. So there's stock and there's stock options, and if they're involved, this could be another great area to negotiate because, like Chris said, the base salary is really the heaviest burden on the company. Stocks and things like that, they have a lot more flexibility with their cash flows and with the worth and what they're able to do. So they actually prefer giving you more on these fronts anyway. So you could potentially negotiate for, let's say, $100 in your salary, or like $200 in stock, that kind of a ratio. So sometimes you'll be able to get a lot more, or they won't be able to push at all in base salary, but they can negotiate more in the stock area. Stock options are a little bit of a difficult thing sometimes because they might seem like they're very valuable, but it depends on the company. If this is a startup that is very, very young, might be somewhat worthless because some options are disappear when your ability to access them disappear when you leave the company. So that might be even more likely than them going public and the amount of years that you'll work there. Or if it is equity, they might not ever go public. So just keep that in mind. Think about of those equity of startups that aren't public yet, or stock options. As very, very little value. I mean, you still can negotiate and get more, and just it might come out, but don't trade it as much for salary. Stock, depending on the company, can be actually more valuable, and you might want to push more on that anyway.
Yeah. If you do get stock options, make sure you also ask for details on what the company thinks they're worth, what the strike price is going to be. And this is just so that you make some informed decisions about how much more of this you want versus other benefits. And that said, it's kind of a red flag if the company doesn't have that information for you. And so just keep that in mind as you're negotiating. Another thing you can do is, if for for whatever reason, you don't really get the package that you want, make sure you specify in your negotiations when you want to revisit this compensation package again, right? This should be kind of your last line of defense, right? You should this should hopefully never come up in your in your conversations when you're negotiating the packages you're getting. But if it happens that you don't get the things that you want, but you still want to work there, work with them on when you're going to revisit it so that you can always negotiate again at some future point in time. And realistically, you should be engaging with your manager about this stuff anyway, right? So in your one-on-ones, you should be talking about this with your manager. So even if you didn't do it, for those of you who are working right now even, and you haven't talked about your compensation with your manager in a while, this is a good opportunity to get it back on the forefront so that you can start negotiating these things for your benefit.
All right, now let's talk about what you might want to avoid. We talked about all the things you should be doing, but what should you not be doing during these negotiations? And the first thing on that list is not to be too pushy or give ultimatums to them. And a lot of times this can feel like just the basic negotiations for some of us. So make sure you understand like what is pushy and what's just asking for what I'm worth. So something pushy could be something like, if they say like, we really are not able to do that. And you're like, well, you need to do it, you have to do it or something like that. Or you change the tone of the conversations from how can we make this work to like, you need to make this work for me. Those tonal changes, I think are more along the lines of what we're talking about there. And then ultimatums can also be, not leave a bad taste in the mouth, and is a bad negotiation tact to say like, if I don't get this much, I'm walking or something like that. And another thing you can, well, yeah, I think that's about it from there. I think a lot of us generally don't have a problem with this negotiations, but in general, just try and make sure that you're empathetic with them, that you're being tactful, and you're creating a positive, collaborative environment with the words you're using and the tone you're using.
Yeah, it's a collaboration, not a battle.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing is basically don't be impatient, right? Negotiation sometimes takes time, and it can be a few different rounds. You have to be careful that you don't make it go on for too long, because that might, wear on people's patience. But that being said, sometimes multiple negotiation rounds can feel like a lot when it's really just part of the natural flow of negotiation.
Yeah, you've got this like fish on the hook, and you're just nervous. It's not. It's gonna it's gonna get away, right? Like 3 days can just seem like an eternity when you need the job and you're really excited about the job. But be patient. This is like a normal part of the process.
Yeah, and so a sort of common back and forth to think about is that you're generally looking at maybe around 4 emails, right? They send you an offer, you reply with a counter offer, they come back with, a new offer based on your proposal, and then you send them back an acceptance. It's pretty common to ask for, some time to consider things. So don't be afraid to ask for more time if you really do need that extra time. It can be even up to like a week or so. Depending on how you feel about it. And yeah, you can even reference that you're, in conversation with other companies if, assuming you are, you don't want to lie to them, but, if you're involved already in other conversations as well, you can use that as leverage to help you get some more time and help you with multiple rounds of negotiation.
And this last one is not pulling actually, like once you've said yes, or that you have given a counter offer, there's like an unspoken rule that you're saying, okay, I'm countering this, and if you say yes, then the deal is done and we're ready to go. Yeah. So they say, we want to give you $100, and you say like 110, and they say, okay, great, here's 110. You can't say, well, actually 110 and this, or actually 115. So when you start to get to the specifics, make sure that what you're stating, if it is getting to like the specifics, that you're willing to accept that. And so that's why it is important to ask for those higher end numbers, because if they say yes, then it's a done deal. You should go ahead and sign that. So this is the biggest one that from the hiring side I've seen is the only really thing that really frustrates people. I've seen just all these long email threads, and those don't really bother people, but if they see like you're moving your goals on them, your goalposts, that's going to leave a bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have room to wiggle in the process of negotiation. But once you get a general acceptance, it's not really fair to change the rules at that point. So make sure you kind of you're working towards getting acceptance, right? So once you get it, stick to it, basically.
Yes.
Okay. So that's mostly all we had today. So we talked about a lot of different things, and just to kind of quickly wrap up and summarize everything that we've talked about today. First of all, negotiations, it's a really important skill for everyone to develop, right? And the hard part is we don't get to do it as much as we probably should. And so hopefully we've given you a bunch of things to think about today. That you can basically start putting into practice.
Yeah, and to reiterate some of the big things, the big takeaways from this is, number one is make sure before the call that you've done your homework, that you come prepared. That's going to help you so much in that conversation to either feel confident and also to know what to push for and what not to push for. This can also mean researching stuff about their compensation structure and all that.
Remember to be a little careful when you're answering the question about, what is your expected salary or what are you making now? You don't really want to give out a number right away, because once you do, basically they will hold you to that number. And so it's good to kind of try to evade that in some way, but not be like, don't lie or whatever, but try to give an answer around like, I'm expecting, industry standards, or we can work it out once I've heard more about the role and what will be expected of me.
And last is, always remember that you do have leverage. Just the fact that they have finally found someone and put an offer together is leverage. Like, you may not have like all the amazing skills or whatever it is you feel like you might not have on like your worth as a designer or as a researcher or whatever. You have it. That just the fact that they found somebody that they're willing to hire and they want to give an offer to is a lot of leverage. And then if you come in with all those other things we mentioned, like some domain knowledge or past experiences, that's all like very exciting leverage for them, for you to use in this process. So just remember, you have value. You are worth it. You are worth it. And last but not least is, when in doubt, negotiate. Okay, we lost Chris. That's okay. The last slide is, when in doubt, negotiate. No matter what happens, make sure you get that one sentence out, like I did in that second job that I had. Just no matter what, just write it down. Make sure that sentence comes out of your mouth, that you start that negotiation process. And that's really the most impactful thing you can take away from this, is to actually start that negotiation process. Have the courage to push back and ask for a little bit more, and you'll get it. And thank you. I don't hear you, Andy. You might be muted.
Just kidding.
Okay.
Now you can hear me, right?
All right. Yes.
Yeah. I was saying, look at so what we do every single week is, and we started this with Michelle Ronson, a researcher, a couple weeks ago, is we want to show kudos and appreciation for our awesome speakers. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I told you I've been talking really funny lately. Here we go. Yeah, Amy Sandy. We got eight claps from Roger Ebert. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks, Christopher and Jonathan. By the way, the chat is so great. We have such a wonderful audience here asking really, really good questions. Which will go ahead and queue up your questions. Thank you for putting this on. Keep up the event. Thank you. This is however, this was the one from Derek. Thank you for doing this, Chris and Jonathan. These types of discussions are so important, and bravo for taking it on. Yeah, I love it. It's good energy. Oh yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for bringing the podcast back as well. We got design review podcast. Yes. This was great. Well, just wait, it's getting better. Marco, right? Yeah. Raising the roof. Thanks, Marco. Pavitra Shariat. Yeah. 5 claps from Roger Ebert. Thanks for all the tips and great discussion.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And then we also have Alexa. Oh shoot, did I say the bad word? Hello, I'm Ashmaxa. Hold on 1 second. Actually, so Alexa runs a YouTube channel. So hello, I'm Alexa, and she's also a mentor / speaker for Cascade Design Career Network, and she showed up at here we go. Awesome talk. Thanks for hosting, Indy, and thank you, Jonathan and Chris, for being a part of it. So, and then thank you
for having us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, Herman Belmer. That's my boyfriend, Jack. He's just thanks for the shout out, Andy, of course. And okay. So anyway, that was a really fantastic talk. And we're gonna go ahead and we had a few technical difficulties, but it didn't matter because there was so much great information. And before we move on to the Q&A, just go ahead and take a look. Chris Liu, Machine Human on Twitter, officehoursproject.com. That's where you can book mentoring sessions with Chris and John Shariat and others, yes, and a whole community. And then oh wait, hold on, we got another one. That was seriously awesome, Chris and Jonathan. Woohoo! And listen, and then we have Susan, and you make negotiation look so much easier and less intimidating. That's the
goal.
That's the goal.
Thank you so much, Susan.
That's the goal. Okay, and then we have Design UX UI, tragicdesign.com. That's John's information. And then they have Design Review Podcast. So if you want to hear more of Chris and John's content, they have a lot of really great information for designers and product designers, UX designers. Check out designreviewpodcast.com. Now let's go ahead and kick off a Q&A. I'll leave this on the screen for a little bit just for promotional reasons. And we had a few questions in there, but I'm going to ask, I'll kick it off with a question basically about salary ranges and so say that you're working for a company that you really love the company, but they don't necessarily have the money to pay you the salary that you want or necessarily like based on your experience. What are some ways that you should approach getting a job at that company or working for them and getting paid in a way that you feel comfortable about?
Yeah, well, one of the things we did mention was, look at the total compensation package, right? Yeah. The salary is an important component of your compensation. So let's not mix words here. But there are other things you can negotiate too, right? Your salary is just one piece of the whole package that you're going to get. And so maybe if they're paying, a little bit under the average, you might be able to ask for other things, right? And especially, if like, okay, I'm coming into this job with a lot of experience already, and you know that this is going to be worth more to the company, to the business. That gives you more leverage to be able to ask for other things like, hey, even though I'm I'm not making as much salary, can you make it up to me with, either bonuses or more vacation time, or like more stock or more equity or something like that, so that if the salary isn't what you want, you still get something that's either comparable, or if it's stock, it might even be worth more than an annual salary sometimes, depending on the company. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you have
And
different
also
ways
with
to leverage.
Yeah, and also with stock, it might actually change based on if you're actually with the company for a whole
Right.
year, then you
Yeah.
have to wait to like vest it. So
Right.
it takes like a couple, like maybe up to 4 years being with a company for the stock to actually
Yeah.
really matter. But it might,
Yeah.
after 1 year, it could make a difference.
Yeah.
And if you're leaving a company that, like let's say the milestone for that next bonus or the next stock grant is coming up and you're switching jobs, you can also say like, hey, like to join you, I'm gonna have to give up on this stuff. And you can use that as part of the negotiation to say, is there any way we can help, soften the blow or do something there, and they might be able to do a little bit more for you there.
Or maybe vest earlier, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the company itself can't. The one you're leaving, I'm saying, like, might not be able to do anything for you. But the one you're joining might say, okay, hey, we'll cover that because you're about to vest in a month.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's see. What else do we have here? I know we had some really great questions. Amy, you asked a question earlier. I'm trying to find it. Okay, here we go. It's interesting. In the interest of transparency, using your privilege, are you willing to share your salaries? Sorry, this might be putting you on the spot here. And your compensation package. This is the most important action to take. This is the most important action to help with this. It's interesting because it's like, it's kind of vulnerable to share your salary, yet I don't think that, I think I'll let you guys take it from here, but I think that it's okay to share it anonymously, but sharing it publicly, it's like, it's kind of, I feel vulnerable about it. Maybe not necessarily with my current work, but if I was working full time, and I do understand, Amy. So I'll let you respond.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, with people I mentor or something like that, I might share more information or something like that. And then also contributing to things like Glassdoor, or contributing to things like bubbles.fyi to make sure that information is out there. It's public, it's searchable, it's easy. It's also easier to understand because it's in context of everyone all together. So that's kind of where my head is at, but I'm also open to hearing more.
Yeah, and also it's like it has to do a lot also with being able to fully outline and explain all your roles and skills and everything that you do, and and also the company you work for. Like you're at Google right now, so that might impact your salary differently. So it just depends. But I think, Amy, that's a really great question. I actually think we should address it a little bit deeper as I explore more into the design industry that I've been doing for a really long time. Chris, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, it's definitely uncomfortable to talk about. Do I want to share publicly what I made? Well,
yeah, I don't mind sharing if you guys want. I'm like,
thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to. Just do whatever you're comfortable with. But I'm saying that, like, it really depends on your skills and your experience, right?
It's definitely skills and experience. I can talk about, for example, in my last job at Mercedes. Well, I don't know if I get in trouble for talking about this, to be honest. But
yeah. That's okay. It's all right. We'll blot this out. But
well, I can say, for example, that we didn't get stock, right?
Yeah.
That would have been awesome to get, Daimler stock options, but it just wasn't part of the package.
So that's something you would want more. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, we did get other things that were sort of in lieu of, you know, that type of benefit, and it was just like what I talked about, or what we talked about earlier, was whenever, you know, like performance reviews came up, or whenever it was time for like to talk about bonuses and things like that. You know, you could look at your compensation package and talk about these different pieces that you were getting, and talk about like the work you did and how much that is worth to the company, and try to negotiate for different things. You know, because like I said, like we weren't getting stock, but you know, we had these other different pieces that we could talk to try and get more more compensation for what we thought our contribution was. Yeah.
Absolutely. So a lot has to do with how much that you value the work that you're doing for the company or that company itself. Like, but I understand it's kind of like and Amy has a really good point, which is like it's important for us to understand why we feel uncomfortable talking about this. And I think a lot of it is just privacy related.
Yeah.
Everybody has the right to have privacy, and like they might feel nervous that maybe their peers are not making as much or maybe making more, and it's a very intimate thing, like your salary. But I also believe that like sometimes, you know, like I recently took a gig and I'm getting paid a lot less than my normal salary, which is like, but it's still not bad. It's like $50 an hour, and I'm doing but I'm doing like, it's like 8 to 12 hours a week of work. It's not a crazy amount. Like it just really depends, but it's valuable, and I help a lot of people, and I find it emotionally rewarding, as well as like getting new skills and like reinventing my portfolio. So a lot of that has to do, you know, but still it's not a bad thing, like 80, like 50, but it has to do with really like how does this benefit you in the long term, and especially maybe it's a stepping stone for your next career move. Now let's move out of the, unless you want to add more vulnerable stories.
I was going to say also, there are companies that are pushing transparency more, right? So I think one of the things that makes it difficult is because, at least where I was working, they're not very transparent about, you know, pay grades and pay scales and things like that. But there are companies out there that are very transparent with what they pay their employees, you know, where they'll post it publicly on a website even, and say, hey, this is what we're paying, you know, the CEO, this is what I make as a CEO, and this is how it breaks down. And, you know, I think those things are really awesome. And so if the company, you know, that I think is something that I could have done maybe, is to talk about that more with the organization about, like, can we be more transparent? You know, is there a way we can do this to help the industry pay everyone with more equity, right? Because, you know, just me revealing my salary doesn't necessarily help. I mean, it sort of helps in the sense of like, okay, now people know. But I think what we can do is really push organizations to be talking about this more, right? So that everyone's roles is very transparent.
Absolutely. And then the more information that we have about like how, you know, what people are being compensated for a specific role, it's like, okay, well, what else can I learn, and what new skills can I gain to be able to increase my salary? And I feel like, yeah, it should be transparent, but it's conditional, of course, because we're all not the same, but you know, we should equality, equity, privacy. Oh, here, this is an interesting statement. Anyway, let us here, privacy, privacy shame
I think that
issue.
is why those tools can be so powerful. Is no matter what your stance is, like to be able to share and have that in there is really helpful, because then you can go and tap that resource and be able to see all this different salaries and really dial it in to say, okay, well, I have you know, this experience, I'm in this industry or whatever, and even sometimes per company. If the company is big enough, like the tools like Glassdoor, Levels FYI, you can look per company what people of your tier are being offered, or your skill level. So I think there's sort of a I think that's also why those things can be so powerful. And then for the way I feel personally is like on a personal level, I've shared it many times, but like broadcasting, I have to think a little bit more about what the pros and cons are.
It's also tax season.
Yeah.
The best today's tax. Well, it's supposed to be tax day, but yeah.
But another thing is I think Intuit did a really good job at this. That was one thing I was really proud of that company was they would release a report and they would say what's the difference, and they had the difference at essentially 0.0% or like or somewhere around there, very very average, and they didn't have that in some of the other geolocations, and they created a plan to get there. So I think making sure that your organization is aware of that and dealing with that is going to be really helpful as well.
Awesome. And then Chris added what is FANNG? I don't know what that means.
So there's like a terminology. I think it came from like this stock, not market, but stock market, like people, I guess, the group of grouping together these companies. So it's like, I think it was like Facebook, Apple, Netflix. I don't know if there's two N's in there. Google. Some people are now using Microsoft in there. I don't know, but it's essentially like these kind of big tech companies around, I think, the Bay Area.
Oh, the big six or whatever. Yeah. But it's true. That actually sounds about right. And then the bigger companies, I've seen salaries go up to all the way to like 220 for a senior designer.
Yeah, total comp or
total comp. Well, I don't know the salary itself. Maybe that's what. Yeah, I mean, I spoke with a few managers, asked them what the going rate was, and that's
we gotta negotiate.
maybe. Okay, so that actually brings us into a really good question, which is, but I was going to ask you how the pandemic changes salaries, because obviously more companies are going to hire remote because they can, and pretty much everybody was remote the past year. How does it affect salary, and does it affect how you negotiate?
Well, I think there's a few things. One is that if you look at the overall market trends, that any kind of signal that you can get, like stock market is a signal. It's not, definitely not anchored 100% reality. We know that for sure. But in general, like it's the economy's still pumping, and so I think the market value for people is still, I think, for tech workers is still there. So if they're hiring, that's the biggest signal that they're hiring for the market rate. And if they can't afford it right now, they're not going to be hiring. They're going to be downsizing or something like that. So if they're hiring, they've already thought about, okay, this is how much people are worth in this area, and so we're going to open up a position to fill that role. So hopefully, it's not the same. There might be other smaller companies or startups who maybe have like less access to cash or something. And again, I think they're thinking more about what they would have paid anyway, and then should we open up a role or should we not? So continue to push. Again, with all of this, one of the worst case scenario is you say, "Hey, I'm looking for more," and they say we can't. And you have a little bit of a discussion, and the worst case scenario is they say no, and you decide whether or not you're going to accept the offer. And that's the worst case scenario. Like it's never really going to end up. It's very, very few times I've never seen it. And all the times I've been on the hiring side, I've never ever seen people just say like, they negotiated. I'm gonna rescind the offer right there. So having that conversation is really important anyway. Even if you think like, oh, this is this company probably can't afford me, like I should just accept it, and because I need a job right now, or I need a first role, or whatever it is. So just ask. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're going to add anything to that, but we have Davina's asking, do different roles pay more? I mean,
definitely.
Obviously. Yeah. I didn't mean to sound like that.
Sometimes can really affect. Like if your role is like web designer, you might get paid less than if your role was like product designer or UX designer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like it's not, it's like a correlation. I don't think it's causation, right? Like,
Yeah.
But one thing that you can do, let's say in your current role, is set yourself up for success in those other roles. To say, okay, right now I'm currently like a webmaster or something, and you're starting to do some design stuff in that role, is to have them change your title to product designer. And they might not be able to give you a raise at your current job or something, but they can give that title change, and that can start to set you up for success in the next role when you go and you say, hey, my previous experience, I was a product designer here, and that better reflected where you want to go in your career in the future.
Yeah.
And honestly,
the other
you don't
weird
need.
thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm going to give you the mic. I'm going to hide away. But I was going to say, you don't need a company to tell you what your title is, because you know what you do.
Right.
And honestly, like on LinkedIn, I mean, they don't even know what they're posting a lot of the times for the job. They're just like writing titles, and they might post the same job with like a bunch of different titles to see who bites.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you describe your skills? How do you describe yourself? And like talk to a bunch of people and learn about like what is, how should I position myself to best have the best opportunities within the market currently. Now, I'm going to pass this over to Chris because it's about you guys, not me. Here we go. Okay.
Well, I was just going to say, the thing to keep in mind too is that a job title is not the same as the internal level that you get when you join a company, right? So like usually when you join a company, you are set at some level within the organization, which defines like how much you get paid and what are the benefits available to you, versus somebody at like an executive management level who gets all kinds of fancy benefits and things.
Yeah, I think they call them like pay bands or something.
Yeah. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that like, okay, if I'm joining a company at like a senior designer level, that already sort of specifies that you are within some like some range of pay industry wise, but also like what is that in the company kind of thing, right? Because then this is where it gets really tricky, is because they don't really share that stuff. And this is what, like all the stuff we were talking about earlier, is like it's not very transparent what those levels are, and what companies pay for those different levels. And so it can be tricky. But again, I mean, I think all the things we talked about today are tools for you to use, that you can leverage to get the best package for yourself, basically.
Awesome. Okay, now we have a great question from Alex.
One extra.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Comment. I'll check in there at the end. Is when you're looking at the job roles, like Chris, something you said kind of triggered this. Is really important. Like if you don't meet all the requirements, that's fine. Like they're throwing like a big net out there. They're like asking for the world, and they might not be getting like enough qualified candidates or whatever. So always just apply very, very broadly, whether you're qualified or not. Worst case scenario is you say you get a no or they don't call you, right? So apply to those positions. It's really, really important.
Yeah. If you feel that you're a good fit for the role, you're interested in the role, right? So it's like good to have a certain amount of the skills, not like nothing. Like I'm not going to apply for like a carpenter job for when I don't.
I mean, if you're willing to accept the role, yeah.
Build me some shelves, please.
Oh gosh. I did that once. If
I need a job and I get hired as a carpenter, like, and it's going to pay me well, I'm like, okay. And then I get another offer as a designer. I'm like, okay, great. Now I have two offers, right? So I'm open to like, you just apply, right? But obviously, like, within your roles, but like, maybe it's a senior role, or maybe it's a lead role, or maybe it's even like, you're a manager role and you're like, hey, I'm kind of there. I'm like, 70% there. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I think this is a really good question, and this is probably, we have time for maybe one more question after this. So make it real good, audience. Okay. Now it comes down to, like, you say you're at a company and you have to renegotiate your salary. How should designers approach renegotiating salary as they grow and bring in more value to a company over time? Is it just when a title changes, or is this something that you can do throughout your time at the company?
So this is one, we sort of talked about is you should be having regular conversations, maybe not every one-on-one you have with your manager, but do try to bring it up, because I think we'd mentioned this once in one of the podcasts, is that you might be surprised at how little your manager thinks about what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not because they don't care about you. It's just that they're busy with lots of different things.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like you're not being compensated appropriately for the work that you're doing, you should have that conversation. You should always feel comfortable being able to talk to your manager about this topic, right?
Yeah, and so, it can even be like, I'm looking to make this much money. How do I get there? And
right.
Again, making that a collaborative approach to say, it can even be like in your one-on-ones, being like, hey, how am I trending towards this goal that I have? And once it becomes a subject that's out there in the open, it's much easier to talk about. It's much easier for your manager, like Chris said, to have it be top of mind. Like, oh, okay, so Jonathan's looking for more compensation. These conversations are coming up, but let me let them know. Let me talk about it, to my manager, things like that.
Yeah. The thing we always hate to deal with when we're working is like those like wonky like performance management tools and stuff. Everyone has to deal with this, right? Like,
yeah.
Like every like annually you deal with your, you fill out your performance, and then like somebody, you submit it, and then it just goes into your paperwork or whatever. But you can actually use those things as a way to lead the discussion about compensation too, right? So like if, by mid-year, you're reviewing your performance and you say, okay, I've actually accomplished, half my goals already, that's something you can use as leverage for like, hey, I should be getting paid more because look at all this great work that I've done. And look what it meant for the company to have all this stuff being done. So one is just, have the conversation, right? Start the conversation in some way. And if you're uncomfortable with it, like, you can practice maybe with your friends or something like that, but always be willing to like start that conversation somehow. And then just make sure you're like noting down the things that you're doing, talk about what you've done, talk about your accomplishments, and use that as a way to frame the discussion so that it's always about, sort of the work that you're doing and the contributions that you're making.
Now, I just wanted to add, that's really awesome point. Don't be afraid to brag a little bit, right? Is it Najeen or Negan? I just want to make sure I got your name. I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Anyway, wait, where's that? How would you pronounce it? Najin?
Yeah, Najeen.
Najin.
He says, I found out that a guy in my last company was making a lot more money than me while we both had the same amount of experience and contribution to the project. Yeah, that seems like a really good opportunity to share your salary.
Well, hold on. This is more of an anecdote than a question, but
while I to negotiate my rate, I was able to use that number for when I decided to move to another company and getting a more fair offer. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so,
yes, yeah. That's
yeah, it's true.
Talk to your colleagues.
Like Megan. Okay.
Yeah, it's the most comparable, right? Yeah, you're in the exact same company at the exact same role. Yeah, like you should be doing the same work.
Yeah.
You should be getting paid the same compensation.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and especially if you're. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but you maybe can ask them about a range. So, let me guess.
Comfortable with, but something is better than nothing.
It'd be fun to play like guess this salary. All right. I don't know.
From $1
to. Okay, so and then one last. I guess this is. Do we have anybody who wants to ask the final question, or should we leave it up to Andy? Because I like to ask questions. I like to talk a lot.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add to what Chris was saying earlier is that as you develop over time, like you notice that like you're becoming much more of a leader in your role, that people are depending on you more, and you're becoming more senior, or you're becoming more of a lead, or your responsibilities changing. It's becoming bigger in scope. Like those are good signs that it's time to renegotiate. It's like you can talk to your manager, whoever, and say, hey, when I joined, this many years ago, or whenever, the role looked like this, and I was doing this, and now I'm doing this. I look like this, and so I'm looking to get a raise, and they'll want to keep you.
Yeah, I mean, every
Give me your money.
role you'll have, every role you have, it's obviously, the job description that they post when you initially get hired, that's just the job description. But in almost every situation, the role that you get hired for evolves significantly past whatever it was they listed in that job description. And so all that means is hey, you should be asking for more money at some point down the road. Even 6 months into it, you can start having those conversations.
And another reason why negotiating in that initial offer stage is so important is because oftentimes the way that companies are set up is the promotions, even the bonuses, the yearly average increases for the normal average performers are all based off of your salary. And so that initial negotiation you did when you first got hired can really impact all these other mechanisms of rewarding you for your work and things like that. So another reason to really push on that initial offer.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris and Jonathan.
Hey, great questions, everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, really great questions. That's really interesting. Derek Collins says that Netflix encourages employees to go out and interview at other companies to better understand what market rate for your role should be. That's pretty.
I mean, interviewing. I mean, that is a really important thing. Is if you're happy with your job, be interviewing. For me, anytime I'm past a year or two, I try to look for roles, and you can be more picky. You can ask for more in those offers, because if you're happy at your job, great. If you find a better role and they're going to offer you way more, you can be more picky. Right? Otherwise, you can just say, no, I'm good. I'm going to stay at my current job. So that's another great negotiation tactic is having a job already, and then interviewing while you have a
a Awesome.
Thanks, Amy. Great questions. I really appreciate that.
Really awesome.
A lot to think about.
Here, awesome questions. For those who would like to get in touch with Chris or John, follow them on Twitter, Machine Human, Office Hours Project, John Shariat, Design UX UI, not UI UX, tragicdesign.com, designreviewpodcast.com. Listen to their podcast. This has been a lot of fun. And next week we have Sunny Patel, who is a UX researcher senior UX researcher at LinkedIn. And she's going to talk about how she broke into user research, basically moving from academia. She had a PhD. She has a PhD in academia. I believe it's in psychology. And she moved into UX research. And that's actually a big question. So share it with all of your research friends. If you liked tonight's event and you would love to continue to attend our events, we stream on Thursdays at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And also go ahead and like us, subscribe, like this episode, because it really does help us grow. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that like button and tune in next week. And also the following week, we will talk about interviewing tips for collaboration. Basically, we have Gretchen Anderson, who wrote a book called Mastering Collaboration. She's going to be talking about how to display and how to communicate how you collaborated with others during an interview. So that's really, really awesome. We also have some giveaways for that. I'll be posting them on Twitter. And that's it, everybody. Thank you so much and have a great night. And we hope to see you next week. Thank you. Stick around, guys, for a second.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, we got to wave. Smile and